Hello there, and welcome to the Tammy Tuckey Show. My name is Tammy Tuckey, and it's good to see you. So, tonight I'd like to welcome back to the podcast singer and first time author, John Zovath, to the show. Welcome, John.
How are you?
Doing
Doing
great. Good
good.
to see you again. It's been a while. I think the last time we spoke on the podcast was probably, 6 years ago with Juanice Charmaine. So,
2018, I think. Yeah.
a while. I can't believe it's been that long though. So that's how long
Yeah.
we've known each other.
Yeah.
So
For sure. Sure.
how have you been doing? What have you been up to besides the book? I was curious if you're still performing.
Well, I play one night a month right now, solo piano, and that's how I kind of start off the book. Actually, is because my father always told me if you keep memorizing songs from the '40s, if you're playing for older people than you and things like that, it will go over well. And it did. And that's kind of how the book starts with that. So a new resident comes into the place I was playing, which I call the Welcome Home by Cooperstown, New York. And he asked me to play songs from the '40s, and that's how everything gets started. And he trusts me and wants me to write his story up at Saranac Lake in New York in a log home that he owns. So that's kind of
So
how
so
it
let's
begins.
so
Go ahead.
let's talk about the book. So you sent me a copy. It's called The Band Leader, and there's your name.
Right.
So this is really
Yes.
exciting. And for those who are watching, you can in the chat box, the link to the Amazon page to get your copy is there and also in the show notes below. So tell me about the inspiration into starting this because I think you had told me that I think you worked on this for about 2 years, was it? Or a little
16 months about. Yeah. About
longer?
16 months. It took a while.
Inspired you to kind of dive in and become an author and put together a story on paper?
Well, I always wanted to write a book called The Band Leader. I had different ideas and this and that. But what I decided to do is just to create this character of Francis Casella. A lot of Italians in this. And Johnny Angelina, because Angelilli was my mother's maiden name, but I changed it a little bit to Angelina. And basically it promotes jazz musicians, classical musicians, which has always been something I wanted to do. And that's how it
Mhm.
all begins. And he tells me his life story from graduating Juilliard in 1957 and playing with a jazz big band. And then it proceeds that this Sal Martello, he asked him to play for Mr. Catino's niece's wedding. So he gets involved with what I call the coterie. I call it the coterie, which is a specific group of individuals with one specific goal with no outsiders involved, if you get my drift. So he
Mhm.
does that, and they hook him up with a lot of movie producers in Los Angeles. And then they get
Interesting.
in, anyhow, part of it's a little bit of it is my life. I mean, if in order for me to have gotten the Epcot song, it was the band leader of the Carpenters up in Lake Tahoe, Doug Strawn, who passed away in 2013. He was a great musician, and he hooked me up with the Carpenters A&R person, Ed Solzer. And Ed's the
Mhm.
one that got to knew Bob Molen, who wrote the Canada, You're a Lifetime Journey for the Traveler. And the Disney people asked Bob to find someone to sing it. And that's how he picked me and Juanice at the time in 1981, I think is when we recorded it.
Like
So
almost
that's
4 degrees of separation, but it's really who you know, right? So
right. It
so
always is.
so let's come back to the book because we're mentioning Epcot, which a lot of people know your voice through the original Canada 360 film that they used
Right.
to have. The pavilion is still there, but it's the film's updated over the years and has different singers to the
Right.
song. But this was a song that Bob Molen had written, and he had written a lot of the songs around the 80s when Epcot first opened. So
Right.
this particular song plays at the end of this short film just about Canada. So, John, you and Juanice Charmaine got to sing the song together as a duet. So, we now know how you got called on by Bob Molen to do it. So, talk about how long it took to work on the song and then the process of recording it. How long was that from beginning to end?
Well, we went in and I think we had 7 musicians. There were a few horn players, bass, drum, guitar, piano, and it was in Newport Beach where we recorded it.
Oh,
And
okay.
then they sent it to the Canadians, I think, into the Parliament in Canada, and we didn't think they're going to use Americans because we thought they would use Canadians. But they liked it so much they kept Juanice and I on it, and that's how that transpired.
So how long was that process though of recording it? Would you say like was it a
Oh,
3-day thing or a
oh
week
no,
or?
Juanice and I, we kind of nailed it. We did it in 1 hour. We were
Oh,
both
okay.
prepared. I hadn't met her until we got into the studio, but all the musicians
Wow.
were first class, and
Mhm.
we just started singing, and it came together really beautifully. So
That's
that's how that.
that's amazing. Well, she had to learn French in an hour, it sounds like.
Well, I think she practiced that before we got into the studio, but
So you had the music beforehand is what you're saying, but you didn't
yes,
get to work together until you really got into the studio. So you didn't know what she was going to sound like and vice versa.
and vice versa, right? We didn't know, but it clicked.
Oh,
So
it
when we got
worked
done, we knew it was
beautifully.
a take. We just didn't think they were going to keep us, but the Canadians liked it so
They're
much
like,
they
"Hey,
kept
why
it.
not? It sounds good."
23 years, I
And
think
you
it was
guys,
there.
yeah, for a long time, I'd say maybe like 27 years until they updated the
Right.
film. And then they did actually hire a Canadian from I think it was Canada Idol or Canadian Idol. I don't know what they
Canadian
call it.
Idol, if I looked it up, yes. I forget her name though. I wish I remembered her name,
I
but
think it her first name's Eva, I believe,
Eva.
because I have
Yeah.
her version on my phone too. I have both of your versions. I think both of them are unique, but when I think about Epcot, I think of your version because it's just the epitome of the sound of Epcot at that time because I was introduced to that through like a cassette tape. So because
Right.
and as a kid you get to see the film and then you hear it in person and see the film and then your mind opens. And I think Epcot, the key to its success I feel is through the music because you worked with Bob Molen and Bob is no longer with us. Can you tell me a little bit about Bob and working with him?
Well, I can't remember it was a four-star restaurant in Newport Beach. It had one menu for the week and two seatings. And
Mhm.
what Bob told me, and Ed Solzer, who was the A&R for the Carpenters, that's how he knew Bob. Bob was strolling with a nylon string guitar, and every third song he would sing. And he had been doing 30 and 60-second commercials, jingles as they call them, for Disney at the time in Los Angeles. And they all came in, all the Disney hierarchy came in one night to this specific restaurant. And they just saw Bob and knew that he had written in some of the jingles, the 30 seconds and the 60 seconds. And they asked him to sit down and they said, "Do you think you could write?" I think he wrote 3 songs for the Epcot Center, and he sings 2 of them, if I'm correct.
I
And
believe
then
so,
they
yes.
said they wanted someone else to sing the other ones because it's a duet, but they wanted a different voice. And that's how it all came together, was just they just happened to be there one night at that restaurant and Bob was playing and they knew him. A couple of people knew him, and that's how
That
that
worked
all
out
worked. It's,
really
it's
well.
yeah, it's interesting. It's really interesting. It worked out well for
Lucky
me
him.
too. So yeah, right.
Well, yeah, because again, it's who you know, and when you build a relationship with someone, you never know who knows who.
Right.
Because I'll tell you, every time I talk to a new person about an interview, they go, "Well, hey, I looked in your interview archive and you interviewed such and such, and they're a good friend of mine, so I trust you. I'll come on the show." And you're like, "Wow, okay." You don't think people are going to research you or really delve into your background. So, but it's really really wonderful. I've seen a couple of written pieces of his interviews, but it would have been amazing just to hear how he wrote those songs, like, how he created them, from scratch, because they're all so beautiful. So, in that retrospect, when did you get to finally see the film? Did you go opening day to Epcot or?
No, I didn't go the opening day. A friend of mine took me down, and that was the first time I heard it. And I think, as you remember, you have to stand while that film is on because it
Yep.
was circle vision. It was the first time anywhere in the world that, as the Mounties came out in the front, you could watch them walk around you, and when you turned, you could see the backs of them moving away from you. I think the Canadian exhibit was the first one to have what's called circle vision, and it was just a complete film. I think they filmed it like the scenes in Canada on a helicopter. They had 9 cameras on that helicopter, so it was a complete 360-degree view. So that's how that all worked out. But I did see it, and it was pretty fascinating. I'm standing there listening to it and going, "Wow, this is pretty cool."
Did
So
you go up to
that's
any of the cast members and go, "That's me"?
no, I didn't. I didn't do anything like that. I just went and had a beer and just thought about it. And then they were selling the CDs at the time because, as you said,
Yes.
cassettes were still popular at the time. So I had a cassette and a CD. It was maybe a couple of years later, someone sent me the CD. I think that's what it was. Originally, it was cassette.
Yeah.
So, but I still have a CD copy of it. It's got, I think, 23 songs on it from Disney.
I
From
miss those days when Disney would release theme park music, and we were hoping they would remaster something for the 50th. Wouldn't that be great if they had remastered your original duet and just released
oh,
that? But we weren't lucky. But maybe for the
that's
60th.
okay. Yeah. Hopefully, I'll still be here.
Of course you will be. Don't say that,
Yeah,
please.
I plan on it.
So
So,
what inspired you to get into music? What were you as a kid? Were you somebody who kind of absorbed the music at school or at church or through some other way, and you're just like, I really want to play. I want to learn.
well, it was my father. My father was a disabled veteran in the Navy. He broke his neck when he was 21 in the Navy in Hawaii. And
Wow.
he would sing. He was a paraplegic, but he would sing and he
Oh.
would play a song. I think it was Dance with Me, Henry, in the late 40s or something. And he heard me singing along with the record, and he could tell I had the pitch. So he
Mhm.
kind of grew me, and accordion was a popular at that time. So he started me on accordion. But as soon as I got that tiny little accordion, I wrote a song, and he saw that. And I can still play that song if I had an accordion or a piano right now. But he saw that, and then he more or less, groomed me into the music business. And at that time, it was a steel mill town. It was Aliquippa, Pennsylvania. Jones and Laughlin Steel. He didn't want me to go into the steel mills, so
Oh, of
he
course
kept me in the
not.
music business. And I played weddings and different things. And then at 11, I started a band. I started playing guitar, and that was my first time as a band leader at 11. Another band at 14, and then I proceeded to do singles at a place called Ciro's Top of the Mall, which was run by some Italian Cateris. And then I left for Las Vegas. And then I went to Las Vegas in 1972 at the age of 19. And I got a job pretty fast there. I was pretty lucky. I walked into the right agent at the right time. And then I ended up in Palm Springs. And Frank Sinatra was in retirement from 72 to 74. And I met one of the people in his inner circle, heard me play, and we became friends. So it was kind of an exciting time because I'm like 19, 20, having a couple of drinks with Frank Sinatra's inner circle and Mr. Sinatra at the same time. So I would ask my friend Buster about his band leaders, and he would tell me a couple stories, which I won't go into. And with all this experience I've had of being a band leader and meeting band leaders and in rock, I met a lot of guys that led bands in rock. In Newport Beach, there was a great band. I can't remember their name, but that's the experiences I had. So I created the character Francis Casella, how he started in 1957 playing those big band songs and jazz and everything like that. So I kind of created the character like that.
So in the band leader, would you say that the main character is very similar to you in his story and journey? Was that something that you were kind of aiming for, or did it just happen while you were, pouring out or typing up
I
the book itself?
I created Francis Casella because he was, I think, born in 1933 in the book. But Johnny Angelina is the person that he heard playing at the assisted living home. And that's what I still do once a month by Cooperstown, New York. So I created him hearing the younger man playing the standards, and that's when he decided to ask him. He trusted him, and to go up to Saranac Lake and let him tell his story about the 1957 graduating from Juilliard. Then in the book, he gets involved again with certain people, and he's forced to leave the country under an assumed name, and he goes to Vienna, Austria. And on the train, the book is in two parts. So the first part is music and drama, jazz mainly. And the second part, he meets Valentina on a train from Zurich, Switzerland to Vienna, Austria, and she's a cellist, and she graduated from the University of Music and Performing Arts in Vienna, which Bach, Beethoven all went there, especially Johann Strauss and his father. But he falls in love with her as a cellist, and he brings her into his jazz quintet, and it's a romance. Part two is a romance, to be.
Interesting. I love so how do you kind of do you pull from mainly your experiences, or are you also trying to write things that are brand new when you're talking about the characters? Like how do you put together your ideas for a book like this?
Well, you figure I've been writing lyrics for 50 years. I've got the 4 albums on Spotify and all that stuff. I've produced 7 albums. And as a lyricist, it helped me out because you have to tell a story in 3 minutes in a song. But I created the character of Francis Casella because I was never a big band leader, but I was a solo pianist a lot of my life and career. So my character is more like the Johnny Angelina, but I did create him in a certain way too. But primarily, Francis Casella is creative, the created personality that I created. That's redundant, but I apologize for that.
So I'm sure that your least favorite part the editing process, because I don't know about you, but when I write, I try to like scribble down when I can, and then I go back and I'm like, oh gosh, I've got to edit this, I've got to edit that. What's the process after you've kind of written it out, and are you going back, and do you enjoy it or not?
Well, a tip to anyone that wants to try this. I found out after I got about 13 chapters in that I had my spacing incorrect. And I thought I only had
Oh,
220 pages and I was getting close, maybe another 70 pages. When I changed the spacing properly, I had 300 pages. So I was kind of in a jam. So I had to figure out how I'm going to end it without rushing it because I didn't
yeah.
want to have 400 pages. So the editing was really tricky. I mean, the rewrite is really what it is. You got to rewrite it.
Yeah.
You look at it again, you rewrite it. Then I wasn't hitting the tab button properly either. So my indentations were inconsistent and my quotation marks were inconsistent. So it probably added 4 or 5 months because I want to do a second band leader. Because at the end of the book, Francis Casella makes Johnny Angelino promise that he'll write his story of being a band leader, which is more of my era. So
Hmm.
there will be a little bit more rock involved, still jazz, but more rock and how I started bands and stuff like that. And then the third band leader is going to be more of a biography of how my father conducted my career over the years with all his advice and, from his recliner, that type of thing. So it's going to be like a
Yeah.
trilogy, 3 of them on
I
Amazon.
didn't know that was going to happen. That's really
Yeah.
great.
It keeps me going. I mean, I believe when you get, I'm 71 and you have to keep doing something. And at the same time, I wrote Valentina's Concerto, which is solo piano and cellos and violins, violas, and upright bass with a bow. And it tells the titles of the music, the semi classical music, follows the story of the band leader. So now I'm working on a blues album because Johnny Angelina in the second book, The Band Leader 2, it goes into a lot of blues. So I will
Mhm.
release that album and I hopefully can get this book done in about 6 or 7 months. sometime next March or April is what I'm planning for.
And where would we be able to find the album? Do you have a website, or should we check
Well,
out and continue to look at
Valentina's
Spotify?
well, it's on both. Valentina's Concertos specifically on SoundCloud under John Michael Zove, and it's also on Spotify, which has 3 other albums on it. A while back, I signed a record contract and a publishing deal with a gentleman by the name of Graham McLean out of London. He lives in New Zealand, called North Star Music. He's a quite famous arranger for classical music and different things like that. And he has the publishing on 3 of my albums. Into the Wind is on Spotify. Sound Advice was the second album. And then a blues album I did earlier in Nashville when I lived in Nashville, Shake the Blues. He and I joined together on that one. So those 3 are out there. Now, Valentina's Concerto is more of my publishing company called Zora Blue. So that's where that is right now.
Great. Well, and I did put the link in the show notes to the SoundCloud and Spotify, just as a reminder for listeners, so you can go ahead and click on those links and be able to listen to John's music. I really highly suggest it, because John has sent me so many different songs over the years. Like, we keep in touch, which is wonderful, because I love hearing new music, and I think music is just key. I love that you get to perform for assisted living individuals, other residents. I work in assisted living myself, so it's one of those things where music seems to really brighten so many people's days, but also it brings back so many memories, especially for those who are in memory care. Sometimes you put on a song and they just light up and they're a different person. I don't know if that's something you witness when you get to play some songs.
Well, I do, but something interesting happened. Now, I started there 10 years ago, and I was playing songs from the 40s, and it all worked. I'd play You Are My Sunshine, it worked. In the last 2 years, a few of them asked me for the Eagles, and I had to step back and think, wait a minute, I'm getting a little older now. They're not that much older than me when I look at it. So I started, and I play Stairway to Heaven on a solo piano piece.
Oh,
So it's I guess
nice.
catching up a little bit, but they still want to hear some of the older songs. So, that
That's
type of thing.
that's wonderful. They get to rock out a little bit.
Yeah, I did a twist and shout last time I was there a couple of weeks ago, and they would sing
Did
along.
anybody dance? Anybody get up and
Uh,
dance?
they're not really up to dancing so much, but they enjoyed it. They enjoyed it.
Their toes are tapping.
Their toes are tapping, definitely. So
And
that's
they're
pretty
clapping, I'm
cool.
sure, right? So they're
Yes.
clapping
Well,
and
I don't pause between songs. So I play my 60 minutes all the way through, unless I say something to them. And then at
mhm.
the end, they all applause. And I always end with America the Beautiful at the end. So I always do that
Aw,
for many years now. I'll play that at the end. And they all know that that's it. So.
that's really nice. That's beautiful. A lot of people, again, as we had said, a lot of people really know you from the Canada song. And I was just curious what your thoughts were overall on that legacy, of being involved in the park in some sort of way. Have you heard from a lot of people over the years who
Uh,
tell you how much they love it, besides me, like almost every day?
Well, yeah, there's a copy of it. I think I sent you the link. Several, I think 170,000 views, and it just has a picture of a lake or trees and stuff in Canada, but it plays the song, and there were a lot of comments on that. But that's
Yep.
really all because I haven't been, down to Orlando or anything like that. You know, I just kind of backed and enjoyed it. It was an accomplishment. That
Yeah.
type of thing.
I love the
So,
Canada Pavilion. I think it's like the underdog of the pavilions, the 11 pavilions they have.
right,
The
right.
poor pavilion, like, it's beautiful, but it's Canada. So a lot of people kind of go to the left when they start World Showcase. Everybody says the right way is to the left to Mexico. You start at Mexico and then
Right.
you end at Canada, which I feel so bad. I love going right to Canada, and they did a little bit of renovation on some of the buildings up at the top, which is really, really, really great. Did you ever eat at the Canada restaurant? I was going to ask, actually. Did you
No,
ever
we
eat there?
didn't. No,
Okay.
no, we didn't
I
do
haven't
that.
had anything. I have not gotten a chance to eat a meal there, but I hear great things. So if we ever go to Disney World, I'm treating you. We got to go and try the Canada restaurant.
Oh, yeah. Well, if I recall, all the employees are from the country of the pavilion that they're in. Isn't that true? Like the
Usually.
waiters, the waitresses, and the chefs, aren't they from, like, if you go to Mexico, they're from Mexico. If you go to China, they're from China. I'm pretty
It was
sure.
different after COVID. It
Oh,
was
okay.
that was not the case. It was just regular cast members running the pavilions, but that was due. I'm sure they have like some type of program that brings college program individuals
Right.
from the other countries in. But when we were last there, it seemed to be kind of back to normal, where there were people who represent their own country there at their pavilions. So which is great. You know, it's great to see them. I think I did another interview with 3 individuals who had worked on the Millennium Village, which was an addition during the Millennium Celebration. And it was at this other building that's kind of usually only used for expos and things like that. But they were a part of like a group that came in and represented, you know, a couple of other countries. And
Mhm.
you know, they talked about their experiences, and it's a really unique experience for them. Some of them are in there for like 9 months or a year. I don't know if it's any different now, but it's just interesting to hear how they kind of see how America sees their countries, right? But a
Sure.
lot of effort went into the research on these countries, and it was also in consideration. It was consideration and working with the country, right, to make sure that it
Mhm.
was, you know, the specs were right. It was religiously, you know, nothing was like rude or, you know, in honor, you know, just it was accurate is what they were kind of going for. So I always find that interesting. But it's funny because like there, after you come out of the theater, there's like a little section where there's a table and they have this thing called Kid Cot. I don't know if it's still called that, but you can go around with like a flag, and you can go around to all the pavilions and you get a stamp from a cast member at that pavilion on your flag, and you get to color it on the way when you go around,
Oh, okay.
which I
That's pretty
find was
cool.
always so much fun
Yeah,
because
sure.
you get to meet the cast members, the children get to ask them questions, and it's really unique. Although I've never asked anybody from Canada if they also speak French, because part of the country speaks French as well. So, which is why another reason I love that the song is part English, part French,
Right,
because I
right.
don't think any other Disney theme park song really does that. So, which is great. So,
Yeah, yeah, that's I haven't been there in a long time. So,
have you ever sung the song to the residents before at the senior living
no,
facilities, or?
I've never, played it or sang it on my own. I'm waiting for us
Really?
to do it. We'll see if that happens.
Oh, that would be
'Cause you've
great.
got
When
a
we get to
beautiful
meet,
voice. They need to know how beautiful voice you have. So
oh
I've heard
shuck.
Tammy sing, and she is excellent. Excellent.
It was fun because I got to a friend of mine who is a French singer. He's wonderful. Sereno, he got to record the song with me on my album, Glowing in Timeless Places, and that was really fun. But we switched it. So instead of the man singing the English part, it was me singing the English part,
Okay.
and he sang the French version of it, the French lyrics section of
Yeah,
it.
I
So
heard that. I heard that. That's on your newest album, right?
yeah, I think
Correct?
I emailed it to you right away. I was
Yes,
like,
yes, it
before
was
this
good.
comes out,
Very
I
good.
was like,
Yes.
John, can you let me know? Is this sound okay?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was great. No,
Yeah,
sure.
it was fun to do it. But next time we're gonna have to do a duet version of it. I just have to brush up on my French because it's not it's not the best, but I could try.
Well,
So,
we'll
but
see what happens. You never know.
You never know. You never know.
No,
But
you don't.
again, I like to remind people the band leader is out. John's new book. If you look in the chat box at the very top, the pinned comment is the link to Amazon to get your copy. You can also get the link in the show notes below. Check out John's Spotify and SoundCloud so you can listen to his music. I'm sure many of us already have the Canada song on our iPods. We love to listen to it all the time. There are a couple of questions that people have in the chat. There's some people who have been, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to ignore everybody in the chat today. Narnia Expert says, do Disney's Circle Vision movies mix audio in stereo, or is audio positioned in 360 degrees?
I think
Gosh,
there was something like a couple hundred speakers. If I'm correct, I met a young man in Newport Beach. I was playing a place in Sunset Beach, and his father was involved in the speakers in that pavilion. And I think he told me there were a couple hundred speakers in there. So I'm not sure how you would figure that one out. It was powerful. I mean, they made you stand, as you remember. You have to
I'm wondering
stand.
if it comes from like the top part, like in the section, and kind of spreads out. But I'm not sure. I'll have to. Maybe we'll ask the next time we're there at Epcot. I'll
I'm
just
pretty
go
sure there were
because
many
Canada
speakers.
has. Yeah, because
Yeah,
Canada has a 360 film and China has a 360 film.
right.
So I'm curious if the setup that they have is pretty similar, because China recently just went from film to digital. Finally.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
Canada had already been, I think Canada and France, they have films too, but they had just been transferred. But I'm not sure. So we'll have to figure that out. That's a good question.
Mhm.
And Narnia, well, I think you already answered this. The new book is going to not be a standalone novel. It's going to be part of two more other books. So it's going to
A
be a
trilogy,
series.
as I guess they call it.
There you go.
There'll be 3.
And where can we listen to the original version of Canada, Your Lifetime Journey? Well, you can look it up on YouTube. It
Yeah,
should
it's
be
on
there.
YouTube. If you look it up exactly like that I think it's John Zove, Z-O-V, and one niece, Charmaine. If you type that in YouTube, it should pop up. I'm
I'm
pretty
not
sure
sure
of
if your
that.
version's on Spotify. I think it's the Eva is the only one on
Right.
Spotify.
I don't believe it's on Spotify, but it is on YouTube.
Yep, and you can. It's beautiful. You'll love listening to it if you haven't already, but you should have, because it's a great
Right.
song, and especially if you ever get CD copies, if you're interested in CDs. There's a couple of different Epcot and Walt Disney World albums that you can get where this original song is on there, so you can keep an eye out for that as well. Let's see. Anything else? Oh, we have Caleb says, good evening, Tammy and John. Hello, Caleb. How are you?
Hello, Caleb.
And Narnie also says Happy Canada Day, which was, I think, on Monday. And
There you
Independence
go.
Day
That's
for us was
timing.
yesterday.
That's good timing.
It worked out well. I know. I completely forgot. Canada Day is in July. So, but John, thank you so much for being on the show. Before we end, I always do a Kodak moment with my guests. So we just look at the camera. I count back from 3, and then we just take a picture together. So on the count of 3, and everybody at home can do it with us. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Smile. Perfect.
You
Well,
got it?
it was so great to talk to you and
Same
see
here,
you. It's been a
Tammy.
while. Oh my
It's
gosh.
truly appreciated.
Oh,
You're
and
very good at what you
congratulations on
do,
your
and well, thank you. I
and
appreciate it.
congratulations. It's amazing. And thank you. It's very sweet of you. I'm going to add this to my official, as you can see, my library is here.
I
So it's
see.
going to be a
Yeah,
part of the library.
sure.
Well, thank you guys. And thanks to everybody who was watching and sending in questions. We appreciate that. If you'd like to see more interviews and reunions I do on this channel, please subscribe and share the conversation with your friends on social media. And you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and you can find out more about the show on my website at tammytuckey.com. And again, thanks again to everybody for watching. Thanks to John for being a wonderful guest.
Thank you.
And everybody remember, Canada, you're a lifetime journey. Have a good evening, everybody. Bye, John.
Bye, Tammy. Thank you.